If you are getting frustrated with your search for a condo in Pattaya, especially if you're overseas looking, maybe you're planning on coming to Thailand for the first time, it can definitely be hard to decide where you want to live. It can be hard to trust online ads sometimes. It can be hard to get a real feel for a place until you see it in person. Lucky for you, in today's video, I'm gonna give you my top choices if I was moving into a condo today in Pattaya, as well as give you a little insight on some tips and tricks that you want to use if you're looking for a Thailand condo. So make sure you stick it out for the entire video, because at the end, I'm gonna share my probably most important tip if you're planning on renting or even buying a condo when you come to Thailand. Now, while the prospect of moving to Thailand is very exciting, at least for me, when it comes to searching for a place to live, a lot of the time it can be really frustrating. It can be hard to get the information that you want, especially if you're going overseas and you're looking for a place to commit to for the first time. We all know how it is with online ads, especially when it comes to accommodation. Sometimes, a lot of the times, photos aren't really a good representation of what you're actually gonna get, and finding a place to live in Thailand can be much different than it is at home. So 2 things before we get started. First one is budget. The condos we're talking about today are not at the top of the budget. There's definitely places you can find that are more expensive, as well as not being at the bottom. You can definitely find cheaper places to live, but in my opinion, the bang for your buck for the condos that we're gonna talk about today is really impressive. And well, since it is Thailand, the amount of condo you're gonna get for these prices is insane in all reality. I did attempt to get some in-person tours of the places that we're gonna talk about today, but unfortunately with it being busy season, all the condos are either reserved or they have people living in them or contracts have already been signed. So there wasn't really options to look at the type of places I wanted to look at, which I think is gonna be out of quite a few people's budget. And the other one only had a tour for a 3-bedroom, but understandably those are both pretty pricey. And that rolls us right into my first tip when you're looking for a place to live in Thailand, especially if you're looking for a place to commit to long-term. I would suggest for sure looking for them in the slow season. And when it's busy season, obviously there's more people here. People need to have condos, so places get filled up really quick. People are coming, signing contracts. So if you're looking to sign a lease, I would suggest looking well before it becomes busy season. You're gonna have more options. A lot of places you can go ahead and pay a deposit before, that way when it opens up, you are the next in line. But you do have to be careful with this. There are a lot of people out there that aren't very honest and might pocket some deposits. I know that happened to one of my buddies recently. So if you're gonna do that, I would suggest going directly to the condo management themselves, and they'll get you taken care of. Another thing to think about while you're on your search is if you're looking for budget-friendly options, they're generally gonna have to make a sacrifice on one side or the other. Now, if you're really particular about having a condo that has more space, you're probably gonna have to sacrifice some condo like amenities in order to get a bigger room. Now, on the flip side of that, if you would like the nicer pool, gyms, things like that, if you're still trying to stay in a lower budget range, you're probably gonna have to sacrifice on the size of your room. Not the quality, it's still gonna be nice, but in general, if you're on somewhat of a tight budget, you're gonna kinda have to pick one or the other. So our first place on this budget-friendly luxury condo list, it's here in Jomtien. It's right on the beach. You can literally throw a rock to the water. And even though I couldn't get an in-person tour, they were kind enough to provide me with some videos kind of showing off the amenities, a little bit of the rooms. And this place is Copacabana. If you've ever been on Jomtien, I'm sure you've seen it. It's a beautiful pool in front of the building, as well as the standard Thailand infinity pool on the roof. One thing that I personally really like about this place is the on-site security is on point. There's essentially no way to get into the building unless you either live there or you're a guest getting invited in by somebody. And then of course, the entire building itself is absolutely beautiful, from the gym to the lobby to the rooftop pool. Everywhere you look is just fancy. And honestly, that's usually not my style. It's a nice balance at Copacabana, from super bougie to kind of modern and elegant, so I really enjoy it. The rooms for the price actually are a decent size. It's pretty standard. They're not bigger, they're not smaller. And then another great thing about this spot is being right on Beach Road. You have access to the bot bus. You're really close to Central Pattaya, so it's easy to hop around and get wherever you need to go. Now, rooms here can range quite a bit. One thing you'll start to learn about condos in Thailand is a lot of people already own them, hence condo and not apartment. So the price range can vary quite a bit, but in doing a little research myself, I found rooms for less than 600 USD a month, and that is the case with both condos that we're talking about today. Another tip before we get into our next condo is when you are shopping around, one thing that you're generally always gonna have to pay, whether you're renting or owning obviously, is you're gonna have to pay utilities. You're gonna have to pay your water, you're gonna have to pay electric. Now with water, it's generally a flat fee, but when it comes to electric, depending on the building or even the owner, this can vary quite a bit. So one thing you wanna ask is how much the electricity costs per unit. The electricity company charges around 5.5 baht per unit, but it's not abnormal for people to ask for a little bit more. So that's one thing to definitely find out, how much the electricity costs per unit. All right, so our next condo, honestly, out of the two we're gonna talk about, would probably be my personal choice. The only real difference between these two that could be seen as a positive or a negative, not just personal preference, is location. Now, while both these condos have a great location, I do think Copacabana is a little bit better. Like we said, it is right on the beach, right on Beach Road. Our next one is set back a little bit, maybe about 100 meters, so you're still right on the beach. But to get out to the shops and stuff, you're gonna have to walk a little bit farther. And our second condo that we're talking about is the Riviera Jomtien. So there's actually two of these buildings in Jomtien. That's our next quick tip. If you are looking at places, a lot of the times there will be multiple condos with the same name, just different numbers, you know, Riviera 1, 2. They could be super spread out all across Pattaya. So if you are looking at a place and then maybe you're talking to somebody or you're looking at a location of a place that you like, double check and make sure it's the same one that you were looking at before. But getting back to the Riviera, they were also nice enough to provide us some glamour shots of the entire building as well as some of the rooms. And one of the reasons I think this would be my pick is if you've ever been to Las Vegas and you've been to Caesar's Palace, this entire building just reminds me of that, and Caesar's Palace is my favorite casino. Everything from the face of the building to the lobby, to the lifts, to the gym, to the pools, it just reminds me of a super expensive, really bougie casino. If that's not your style, it's not your style, but I really enjoy it. Of course, it goes without saying, just like Copacabana, they have the rooftop infinity pool. The only difference with Riviera is it doesn't have the pool out front. Me, I'm the guy that gets into a place because they have a nice pool and then I end up using it once a year, so not too big a deal for me. And one little bit of a difference that I do like about Riviera is they have a lot of co-working spaces, which are super cool, especially if you're planning on working online. It can get a little old to just sit in your house every day while you're doing your work. Location is also great, like we mentioned. It's a little further down in Jomtien, not too big a deal though, still right on the beach, still on the bus route that goes up the beach, probably a 20 to 25 minute taxi ride to central Pattaya, barring traffic of course. And out of the two, Riviera is gonna be a little bit cheaper, about 4,000 to 5,000 baht on average. And like we said earlier, depending on what size of room you're looking for, what time of year, who's renting it, they can swing quite a bit. But I have seen studios listed at Riviera for as low as 15,000 baht a month. Which for me, if you're comparing that to American prices, is just wild, but welcome to Thailand. And my next tip, probably the one that I think is the most important, especially if you're looking for a budget-friendly place, is in Thailand. Like we mentioned, a lot of the times people are gonna own these condos so you can talk to them in person. There are places that are still run by an agency, but even then they are communicating with the person that owns it. So in Thailand, it is not out of the ordinary to negotiate prices. Now, of course, it's not gonna be everywhere. Some places are set in stone and that just is what it is. But other places might have a little bit of wiggle room. Maybe if you wanna start your lease in the slow season when it is harder for people to fill out condos, or maybe you wanna commit to a longer lease, or maybe you're willing to pay 6 months of rent in advance. These are all ways to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room to bring down that monthly payment a little bit. So when you go to find your spot, it's one thing I would suggest. If you have the means of doing any of those things, bring it up. And if they say no, they say no. Not too big a deal. So those are my two recommendations for luxury, beachfront, affordable condos here in Pattaya. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.